Please like and subscribe to my channel for videos on astrology, philosophy, spirituality, and also follow me on Instagram.
I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Christine Rodriguez, and she's a Vedic astrologer. She is also a yoga practitioner and a student of yoga, and she also knows Sanskrit, which is cool. And yeah, so and today's podcast will be about Vedic astrology and certain topics related to Vedic astrology. So please watch the entire podcast, and you can subscribe to her channel and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. So yeah, let's start the podcast. So
Okay.
welcome. Can you introduce yourself, like how you got into Vedic astrology?
Sure. Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me on your channel. I feel really grateful. And so I, of course, was born in the United States. So the first introduction to astrology that I had was through Western astrology and just like the basic sun signs, And I still remember being so curious and just astonished by the idea of astrology when I was very little. And I started asking people their birthdays and like trying to figure out people's sun sign just by how they looked.
It's the same thing for everyone, every beginner.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. And I got really into that aspect of it. But when I moved to Austin, I met my first teacher whose name is Mehtab Benton, and he owned one of the most prominent yoga studios here. And he was a Vedic astrologer and taught Vedic astrology courses. And so I remember taking his course and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is it. This is what I've been looking for. This makes so much sense because I had been following Western astrology and trying to like find patterns and consistencies, but something always felt off. It like didn't feel super complete to me, or I couldn't quite pin it down. And then as soon as I found sidereal or Vedic astrology, I was like, oh my God, like this is exactly what I've been looking for. So it was by finding my teacher through a yoga studio.
Oh, that's great. Because I haven't tested Western astrology, so there's a huge difference because of that 24 degrees difference in Western and Indian astrology.
Yes.
But yeah, I've always studied Vedic astrology, so I don't have much idea about the Western astrology.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, according to you, what is the bigger difference between Vedic and Western? Because it's just a calculation difference, the 24 degree.
Mm-hmm.
But what else do you think is the difference between Indian and Western astrology?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that that's, of course, like you just mentioned, there's the more fundamental aspect of the difference in degrees, right? It's like, it's a different mathematical equation to figure out what you're looking at. So there's that difference. But then if you're familiar with James Braha,
I've listened to his lectures.
Yeah. Yeah. And, he kind of introduced me to this concept is that Vedic astrology can be used really, the predictive aspect of Vedic astrology is so profound. Like that's one of the greatest qualities of Vedic astrology, in my opinion, is its ability to predict events. And so with Western astrology, it's said to have more of like a psychological impact and like being able to see the psychology of a person and personality. I'm like you, where I never really learned how to read Western charts. I was just like interested in the astrological concepts. Like Vedic astrology is like really where I learned how to actually read the chart and decipher the chart and all of that. So I can't speak so much for Western astrology in that way, but I've also found that Vedic astrology is incredible at understanding the psychology of somebody.
Yeah,
so
that's the biggest difference that I've heard with every astrologer I've asked this question. They said the Vedic astrology is more to do with the mind compared to the material aspect of a person.
Okay.
And that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense. And, it's hard for me to kind of argue for Western astrology because I think it's amazing. And I think that Western astrologers totally have like a gift and their own art to it. It's just, I'm so rooted. I just like am so rooted in the Vedic concepts and I'm sold on it. So
same. Like we are not criticizing the Western astrology, but
yes.
we prefer the Vedic more.
Yeah. And I would say the other biggest difference is that Vedic astrology is astrologically precise. Like this is the precise placement that the planets were. And then with the Western, it's more in alignment with the seasons. It's more seasonally based, and they like to approach it that way.
Yeah, like the biggest difference is their zodiac signs are moving, while ours is fixed. The nakshatras and everything are fixed completely.
Yes.
That's the reason of all this calculation difference. The calculation, yeah. So talking about nakshatras, like how important are nakshatras, especially the moon nakshatra. Like usually moon is the most important planet in Vedic astrology. Like, and generally in our country, most of the people are named after the moon sign. Like I am a Capricorn moon, so my name starts from J because there's the letters that are associated with Capricorn, and so that's a huge importance to moon. And what it is so special about the nakshatra of the moon, like
the importance of the nakshatra of the moon. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Well, there are so many different important aspects of it, like you just mentioned. And I'm sure that a lot of this is like you already know this information, you know?
Yeah, but for the viewers,
Yeah, of course. So first of all, understanding the moon sign is going to give a lot of insight into the person's psychological attributes, how they process, how they feel emotionally. The moon is also, oh, excuse me, that's an alarm. The moon is also the mother, right? And so there's going to be a lot of connection to our early development and our first introduction into the world, or how we developed emotionally by virtue of our connection to our mother or parental figure. So the moon is going to be very important in that regard. But then looking at the nakshatra, first of all, the nakshatra of the moon is going to set up our dasha sequence, right? So
most important thing to predict events in
And so depending on the dasha that we're going to be born in, that's also going to affect our early experiences in life. If you're born with your moon in a Jupiterian nakshatra, you especially if Jupiter is well placed in your chart, you may have a really, more beneficial upbringing. Spiritual, having teachers early on, viewing people around you as a teacher. But then, if you're born in a Rahu dasha and your Rahu is in the 8th house, you may have some really difficult times as a young person and sudden ups and downs, or, sudden losses, transformation, things like that. So seeing what nakshatra that moon is in, it's going to give so much insight into those early experiences. And then that's going to set up the trajectory of your life. But then as an adult, the nakshatra, it's our personality, it's our interest. So somebody who has moon in Ashwini, right? We look at the deities and we look at the story behind the nakshatra, and we learn about the Ashwini Kumaras, which are the healers, right? So someone who has moon in...
Most of the doctors, I guess, they have their career lord in Ashwini nakshatra. Many of the doctors.
Ayurvedic practitioners, acupuncturists, maybe. So like people who are interested in healing, herbalism, like being a doctor, has a stronger connection to Ashwini because of the story behind it. Yeah. And I mean, go ahead.
No, so one zodiac sign, there are like 3 nakshatras. So that's the reason we see very difference in the same zodiac people. So much difference. Like Capricorn, like my Shravan nakshatra Capricorn person will be different than a Dhanishta nakshatra Capricorn person.
Yes.
His thinking and everything, because my Lord is Moon, while a Dhanishta Lord is Mars. So it will change a lot of things.
Definitely.
Just nakshatra,
And I think that that's also, people who are not looking at the nakshatras, they'll be like, oh, well, my moon is in Taurus and his moon is in Taurus, but we're totally different.
And then
it's like, well, his
many
moon
times
is
that happens.
and your moon is in Rohini. So it makes it more specific, and that's so beautiful and such a unique facet.
Initially, I used to get a lot of confusion because I used to just see the sign and not the nakshatras. So I usually see Cancer moon people, and I thought that, oh, moon is so powerful, so it's good. But then I see that the moon is an Ashlesha and is aspected by Rahu or anything. And then I realize why there is so much of chaos in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so nakshatra is like very important thing in Vedic
Yes.
astrology.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and one another like very misconception, especially in India, is about Saturn. Like they have the Sade Sati, the 7.5 years time cycle of Saturn,
Mm-hmm.
and usually people consider Saturn as a very bad planet, the Mahadasha of Saturn or the Sade Sati. Even the Saturn Moon conjunction is considered like a wish yoga, poison yoga. So let's talk about the positive side of the Saturn, because for me, Saturn is my favorite planet. I have my Saturn in my ascendant, so for me, it's like the most important planet in the
Yeah.
sign of Aquarius.
Okay. Well, you have a good Saturn. Of course you like Saturn.
Yeah, but it's retrograde. Yeah, but the only problem is it's retrograde. So, but still,
Okay.
and
Okay.
even my moon sign is Capricorn, so the Lord is Saturn.
Okay. Lots of Saturn energy. But
It has always been a very, yeah, very attached, like very emotional, like attachment to the planet Saturn for me always
yeah.
has been.
You know, it's so interesting that you say that. Um, when I first met my teacher, Matab, in one of his workshops that he did, he had us mention, like before we saw our chart or knew anything about it, he asked us to.
Your voice is breaking.
Oh, can you hear me better now? I think there's like a little bit, you're paused. So I think that there's just a little bit of interruption. Can you hear me?
Uh, yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay.
I think there was some network issue.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Maybe because of the heavy rain and thunderstorm, maybe.
Okay.
But it's fine. Now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, well, he had us like read the descriptions of the planets and then choose the planets that we related with most. And Saturn was my number one as well. And I have a complete like direct aspect on my ascendant from Saturn. So I understand where you're coming from.
So you have Saturn in the 7th house.
I do. Yeah, but it's well placed. So it's like you, right? My Saturn is relatively happy. But so the positive qualities of Saturn, I think, are something that can be appreciated by Saturnine people because Saturn demands structure and discipline and commitment and hard work. And he gives us the ability to persevere and again, to commit, to show up, to want to work hard. And so for those of us who have a strong Saturn, we hear that and we're like, yes, absolutely, I can commit to that. Like I can rise to the occasion, you know? And so for someone who has a weaker Saturn, discipline and structure and working hard might not sound as fun, right? But regardless, Saturn does give the gifts of learned wisdom. Jupiter, yeah, like Jupiter likes to give teachings that feel fun and feel good and it's like optimistic. You know, he likes to give us lessons out of generosity. Saturn likes to give us lessons by kind of kicking us around a little bit, but then we have that learned experience that we can integrate as wisdom that we can share with other people. And I feel that the teachings that come from Saturn do not fluctuate in our life. Once we integrate a hard-earned lesson, it's like, oh my God, I understand. I'm never making that mistake again. I've integrated this and I can incorporate it into my life. You know how sometimes we learn something and we're like, oh, cool, that's like a nice concept. And then, you know, an opportunity arises and we forget about it. But with Saturn,
like a Mercurian energy, like changing.
exactly. Yeah, 100%.
But Saturn is more fixed. And I've also seen one of the greatest thing about Saturn, especially if it's connected to ascendant or moon, is the spiritual aspect about it. Like it is a practical planet, but somehow, like from what I have researched, most of the monks and the spiritual gurus, like 90% of them, had a combination of moon and Saturn. And
Interesting.
in India, like many people say, it is a wish yoga. It is a poisonous yoga. Like it is not a good yoga, the Saturn Moon combination. But from what I have seen, most of the spiritual people have Moon and Saturn together. Like Saturn is the most important thing. Because of that, they are getting detached. They are getting like the spiritual wisdom because of
Exactly.
the Saturn. So there are a lot of misconception about Saturn actually.
There are so many misconceptions about Saturn, and I agree with you. And it's like Saturn, something that I'm sure you've heard before is that Saturn delays, but it doesn't deny.
Yeah.
So it can make things happen slower, but it's not going to deny you of gifts, and it's not going to fully deny you of certain aspects of your life. But like you mentioned a second ago, the spiritual aspects of Saturn likes to take things away and make us feel detached. And one of the main things to incorporate on a yogic path, and I may, pronounce this correctly, is aparigraha, right?
Aparigraha is the most important. Like I follow Jainism, and it is one of the 5 vows of a monk. A monk has to take 5 vows: ahimsa, aparigraha, achaurya, asteya, brahmacharya.
Yes, yes.
So aparigraha and ahimsa are the most important things for a Jain.
And that's what Saturn.
Yeah, that's what Saturn represents. And even for achieving the moksha, the first step is to be detached.
Yes.
To be detached to the material, the illusionary world, the material world, and to realize what we are. So Saturn, I think, is the most important thing to see a spiritual person, a spirituality, because it directly focuses on the aspects which are religious, which are spiritual.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that that's so well said. And like you mentioned, like Saturn detaches us. And for a spiritual person, like for someone who comes into this world who is meant to be a spiritual being, they can understand that idea of non-attachment. And they can understand like, oh, this is all temporary. Like this is just a finite experience, and so when they lose things or when Saturn takes things, it's like, okay, like this is a moment of practice and surrender.
Yeah, it's just normal. Like, yeah. They don't get affected by it.
Yeah. But then if
somebody
somebody comes into this world and they're not a spiritual person, it's like, oh my God, it burns.
It's chaotic.
Like, yes.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's such an important thing, and it's not like it's fixed. It's like if you can understand these concepts, you can practice non-attachment and you can become more accustomed to the nature of Saturn. So if somebody is watching this and maybe they have a really weak Saturn, or like they've always just totally not resonated with Saturn, it's like you can practice and you can incorporate these teachings into your life, make it less painful.
Yeah. But I don't understand one thing. Saturn is best friends with Venus and Rahu.
Yeah.
They are so opposite to Saturn. It is just so contradictory, this concept of friendship and enemies of Saturn.
You wouldn't,
because Rahu is illusion. Rahu is all about the material world. That is so completely opposite things, but yet they are considered as the best friends. But a Saturn Rahu combination is not at all good. So even though they are best friends, it's not a good combination at all. It's very ironic here.
Yeah, it can be a really tough combination for sure. And I'm not super sure of the mythology behind Saturn and Rahu, but I remember with Saturn and Venus is that there's a story where they're lovers, and it explains the relationship between Saturn and Venus. And they kind of complement each other, because you're right, like Venus is beauty and it's materialism. I mean, it can represent wealth at like a massive level. But then Saturn is austere, he's the man wandering in the forest. So
but also Venus is it is said Venus also represents the bhakti part of the spirituality, the devotion part.
Yes,
so
yes.
That can relate between Saturn and Venus, maybe.
Love it. Yeah.
So but what about the Sade Sati, the 7.5 years, the time cycle of Sade Sati?
Man, Sade Sati is a wild time,
like my current Sade Sati is going on because I'm a Capricorn moon. So in fact, Saturn is completely in middle. The exact middle time of Sade Sati is going on.
Well, but happy Sade
Sati. Sorry?
I said happy Sade Sati.
Yeah. I don't feel like it's a bad thing to have Sade Sati. Like I feel I have matured so much, and from last 5 years I've completely been into spirituality and astrology and all. Maybe it's because of the Sade Sati. Maybe Sade Sati helped me to get detached from the material world. And I was less I started to care less about the material aspect of the life and more about spiritual aspect of the life from last. So yeah, maybe Saturn is helping me to achieve
Yeah,
wisdom.
I'm sure. But so something with Sade Sati, and I'll give you two different case examples because I think that they're so interesting. And as you know, of course, how your moon is placed, like if you have a well-placed moon, if Saturn is a friend to you in your chart, depending on what dasha you're running, it's going to feel a lot different, right? But Sade Sati in general is known for giving a lot of gain. It's working really hard and it's putting forth a lot of effort, but there is the potential to get a lot of material gain. But if it's going to stay is the question.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's kind of a rise and fall. You know, John Lennon, he became famous through the Beatles during his Sade Sati.
same with the Amitabh Bachchan. He's a very popular actor in India, and his ultimate rise was during his Sade Sati. So these are two big examples of gain in Sade Sati.
Exactly. But of course, like for John Lennon, he also had a lot of struggle and hardship, and then he ended up losing it all, you know? But I had one more example of a woman. So, of course, as you mentioned, Sade Sati is a 7.5 year period. And during this 7.5 years, you know, I was watching her because I knew that she was going through Sade Sati, and I was like, I wonder, you know, what's going to end up happening.
Yeah, well,
she got married. She inherited a business. She became like the head manager of a multi-million-dollar business. So she didn't own it, but she was like running it, and she was a huge figure. She became like famous in the community. And then she got pregnant and had a baby. And then by
all during this Sade Sati.
All during her Sade Sati, and now in the final, her moon is in Sagittarius. So it's the final 2 years of her Sade Sati. She got fired from her job. She deleted all of her social media. But now she's, you know, staying at home with her baby and her husband. And so her life just did this total like whirlwind of sudden gain, sudden recognition, like really having a lot of money. And then
but generally this happens. Yeah, that if the initial state of Sade Sati has been very good, the later stage is kind of bad, and vice versa. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. She is also in Rahu period, so.
Oh, just even I am facing the Rahu Mahadasha, plus I have the Saturn Sati. So it has been very chaotic last few years.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you're a yogi and you know how to handle it.
Because because of that, I am still stable about all these things.
Exactly.
Because of the philosophical aspect.
Good.
So that's the reason I thank my Saturn in the ascendant and my 12th house moon, because it shows spirituality. And but talking about dashas, like the Rahu Mahadasha, it's just the most chaotic dasha out there. Like it can make you king and then a beggar within a few months or few years, like days. And it happens, like in my Rahu Dasha, I have seen like the top of my life, and I have also seen very tough times. It has been going on since last like 9 years. No, 9 years. Yeah. So what about the Rahu Mahadasha? Like,
and you know, where do you mind sharing where your Rahu is placed, or do you not want to share?
My Rahu is in 10th house in the sign of Scorpio.
That's like it's in Scorpio?
Yeah, I'm Aquarius ascendant. So
of course. Yeah, okay. Well, you know, Rahu in the 10th is pretty good though.
It's good, but like I lost my father during Rahu Saturn 6 years back.
It's also aspected by Saturn. Yeah, your Rahu's aspected
it is aspected by Saturn, and during that time the Saturn was transiting in the 10th house. It was in the Scorpio 6 years back.
Okay.
5 years. Yeah. So it happened, but I inherited my entire father's business of pearl.
Oh my gosh.
That happened, and after that I've been having a very good time. And now since last year, it's been difficult, maybe because of the Sade Sati, because Saturn has come to sign of Capricorn. But like this type of ups and downs have happened. Like the most bottom of the life, and then recently I rose up, like materially.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's great that you like have so much awareness of what is going on though, because if somebody didn't study astrology, they would just be like, what is happening, you know, but
Yeah,
like you're able to
that's
kind
the
of.
way I like when this happened. I
Mhm.
already knew a bit about astrology, but I completely got into astrology because I want to see what is happening and why is it happening. And that
Yeah.
way I completely focused myself into astrology and then realized all these things.
Yeah. Good.
Because if I had not known astrology or not, I have not been a philosophy student or a spiritual person, maybe
Mhm.
this life might be a very chaotic life
Yeah.
emotionally.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
But
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
the knowledge of spirituality, the life is completely, in fact I feel very positive about whatever it is. I don't
Good.
feel bad or anything about it.
Good. Good. Yeah. Yeah. But like talking about the Rahu Dasha, and I mean, it just, you're in the midst of two indicators of this massive rise and then potentially massive fall, you know? So it's like you are just kind of riding the waves of Rahu and riding the waves of Sade Sati. But you have, like you mentioned, it's like you're delving into the spiritual world, you're studying astrology, which is going to make it so profoundly easier than if you were not. And that's my biggest thing with astrology is it's like if you study astrology, your life is going to get better.
Yeah, it actually gets better. We cannot change stuff. Like whatever is going to happen, it will happen. It's in destiny. But
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
it's our karma, we have to face it.
Yes.
But the knowledge about it, the awareness about it, is something that makes life completely different.
Good.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the best thing about astrology and also
Uh-huh.
spirituality.
Yeah. Yeah. And so talking about the Rahu period a little bit, because I know you asked about that. Um, it's similar to Sati Sati in that you're likely to get sudden gains, sudden recognition. People are going to know who you are. Rahu is the material world. Rahu likes to give us things that attach us to material life. So it's like, even if we're trying to be spiritual, Rahu is like, oh, but you wanted $10,000, right?
Yeah,
Or,
that's what happens. Yeah.
yeah.
Even
Or,
if I
oh,
try to become completely spiritual, if I want to like leave everything, become a monk, I am not able to go there. Somehow something turns up that I have to stay here. This is
yep.
what happens in Rahu. Maybe in the Jupiter Dasha or maybe in the Saturn Dasha, which will be
Yeah.
coming in a few years.
Yeah.
Maybe my real path, what I want to achieve, I might achieve. But yeah, this is what happens. Like I cannot leave all this right now because of the circumstances, and that's because of the Rahu Mahadasha.
Yeah.
Like it pulls us towards the material aspect of life. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so funny. It's so funny that you say that. It's like, yeah, it's going to be really hard to become a monk in Rahu Dasha because you're going to be getting so many opportunities and different things that keep you in the material world. That is Rahu's purpose. That's what Rahu wants to do, and its forces are strong, right? And
It's in the
so,
10th house. It has the Dikpala. Like 10th house Rahu is the most powerful Rahu.
yes, yep, exactly. And so, you know, lots of material opportunities, lots of opportunities to be attached to the material world. But then, as you mentioned, there may be a fall. There may be sudden losses. There may be the desire even at the end of it to be like, you know what? I don't even want all of this. Like I am miserable with what I have here. I'm not saying this is going to happen to you, but I've seen it happen to people
Yeah,
where
so the loss doesn't affect us because like even if I have a loss, it's like I never wanted it in the first place. So it's fine. Like have this. So it has made my life much better.
yeah, but not everyone's going to have it that easily.
Of course.
So, you know,
That's the most important thing. That's the reason whenever I meet someone and I like look at their horoscope, first thing I say that what is their perception about life? Like what do they think? Do they think completely materially or do they have any spiritual aspect about them?
yeah,
Because if their perception is completely different, for them certain periods might be the worst periods of their life. And
yeah.
so it's all in the perception, it's all in the mind, whatever we think and whatever we perceive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that kind of ties it back to earlier when we were talking about like some people come into this world and they're born to be spiritual. They already have these things, you know, kind of integrated. But then there are other people where it's just like it's not going to be as easy, you know. So it's like those who do come into the world who kind of are ready to receive these teachings and ready to practice like non-attachment, all of that, they're lucky. They're
Yeah,
really
yeah,
lucky.
yeah.
But that's
Maybe some
also
good karma. Yeah, maybe some good
exactly
karma is there.
that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
because I've seen people who like have no idea about all these things. Like
Yeah.
I'm in India, and your people are not like the rich wisdom that has come out of India. And many Indians don't even care about all these things, astrology, philosophy,
Yeah.
spirituality.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very sad to see, but that's
It
how the
is.
world is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's sad, I mean, of course, I'm in the US and there are people who have never heard about astrology, but they're naturally spiritual. Like
But
there's
it's
the,
net, yeah. But it is
but
still possible. But it is still possible for someone in the Western country who might not heard about spirituality or astrology, like the
yeah.
Indian Eastern philosophy or anything.
Mhm.
But for Indians to not follow it, not believe in it, seems
I
very
hear
bad. Yeah.
that makes sense. That makes sense. But what's the most sad thing about it is it's like this is the key to liberation. It's like the
Yes,
philosophy. It's like this is the key to happiness. It's like it's right here. And so when people
it's
don't
just,
express this,
yeah. We have to just understand it, that what it is in reality.
yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of difference for people. And even astrology has become very materialistic at places.
Yes.
They
Yes.
prefer all the remedies to earn wealth, and I don't think those remedies like sacrificing something or doing some random thing will give wealth, because I think the karma, if there is bad karma, how are you going to get wealth with these
Mm-hmm.
remedies about doing some random stuff?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People, I mean, it requires a logical thinking, a very like good logical thinking to realize that
Mm-hmm.
some types of remedies don't work, and people spend millions in those remedies and all just to
Yeah.
have some wealth, some material gain. Yeah.
Yeah. The way that I heard it, the way that I was taught is that the best way to burn karma is through personal practices, through sadhana. My teacher always said that sadhana can change everything. And so devoting time in meditation or chanting mantras or even cultivating a relationship to like a god or a goddess, But the intention behind these things are different than sacrificing something for money. Do you see? The intention is different and the energetic
Completely.
aspect is different. So, I do believe in remedial measures and I think that they can have a really powerful effect, but it depends on where the intention is coming from and kind of where you're coming from. That's my perspective. That's how I
And
perceive
also
it.
the remedies need to be more practical, like which affect us. Like if someone has a like some issue related to, maybe someone has a problem with their ego, their
Yeah.
self-esteem. So they should be working directly on their self-esteem compared to doing some random stuff outside of their self. Like because the problem is inside, and they are going outside. So yeah,
Yeah,
and
you
that
want to
is
be
what is
practical.
happening. Yeah,
You're a Capricorn moon. You want to know what people are doing to practically help themselves.
yeah, it is how it is.
Yeah. That makes sense, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, and even in religion, the more ritualistic aspect has increased a lot in religion compared to the philosophical aspect about
Oh.
self-realization, detachment, destroying the karma. So yeah,
Hmm.
these things are happening, but it is maybe the Kali Yuga. The time cycle
Yeah.
is bad, and some bad
Hmm.
karma. But
Yeah.
but astrology is very important to like go towards spirituality way. If we
Yeah.
perceive it in a in a very right way, there is a path
Mm.
towards spirituality.
Yeah.
Do
Absolutely.
you have any other question? Like
I'm interested. I know that this is your show, and so people already may know this, but how did you get introduced to astrology?
my mother was into astrology, but I was very skeptical about astrology. I never believed in astrology initially, and even I was just like the normal person
Uh-huh.
who didn't believe in astrology and stuff. But later, when I started studying a bit around 1920, when I was 19 or 20. Then at the age of 21, my father expired. And then I wanted to see that what exactly happened. Why did it happen? And I checked my own horoscope, and I realized that it was meant to be. Like the combinations and everything were perfectly aligned to the exact date when this was going to happen. Then I
Amazing.
started researching about it more and more. Then I looked at all my friends' kundlis, horoscopes, and I got into astrology completely through that,
Oh,
like
cool.
through research and through the more practical aspect
Yeah.
of predicting and seeing whether it is working or not.
Awesome.
And then I realized that astrology is 100% correct.
Yes. Yes. Without a doubt. And
Without a doubt, yeah.
it's so
And coming from
hard.
a person who was 10 years back, I was very skeptical about it. Like I didn't believe in it. And I've
Yeah.
tested it, and I can guarantee say that it is 100% right. And it
I
led to the path of spirituality, which is
uh,
more important. Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
But how
Awesome.
did you get it completely, like being a Westerner? It might be very different for you to learn something about India. Like, how did you
Yeah.
get into this,
Mhm.
like the Indian philosophy, Indian astrology?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I just lucked out. And as I mentioned to you, my teacher, Matab, he was very traditional and he was very true to Indian practices. So he was also a yoga teacher and a Kundalini teacher. And so he stayed like by the tradition in which things were taught. It wasn't like he took a little
Which is
bit of
very
it.
rare.
What's that?
Which is rare. Like people forget about the tradition and the culture.
Exactly.
It is very important.
Oh, it's so
Uh,
important.
but
Mhm.
what did you think initially when you found out about the Vedic system, the Indian astrology and Indian philosophy? Like
Yeah.
initially, what were your thoughts when you just found out about all these things?
So for like the Indian, like Hindu philosophy, or I mean, even just like Eastern philosophy, like to make it even more broad, I was immediately attracted. I was like, this is exactly what I was missing because I grew up in a Christian school. I went to a Christian school until I was in high school, and I had heard nothing of having these tools and modalities to transform my life and to connect with my spirituality. You know what I mean? It made so much more sense to me. I was immediately attracted to it. I loved the yamas and the niyamas and having a guide of
Yeah.
like how to live my life and how to conduct myself properly. So like that was just immediately attractive and made sense. And with the astrology, like you, like it made more sense. I was like, okay, astrologically precise, love it. My moon is actually in Aries, makes so much more sense.
Oh,
So like
in
I
the
had
Ashwini Nakshatra or
yeah, in Ashwini, yeah. And so it's like I had these little moments like of personally, like, okay, personally that makes more sense. But I was still skeptical because like my teacher, like I was listening to him talk and he would say these like grand things about what astrology can do. And I'm like, really though? Like, can it really do that? And so, like you, I started studying, I started doing research, and it was absurd how, without a doubt, every time the astrology is there, it's precise, it's accurate. Like, this is a science. It's not woo woo, it's not like something that's made up. It's like a science. And it's in astrology, studying the stars is the first science that unites all of the cultures. Like it's not, it's very frustrating for me because being in the West, people often discredit it or think that I like put too much weight into it. And I'm like, well, watch this because I'm going to predict X, Y, and Z about your
it's
life.
like a magic show. Like when we do predictions, it's like a magic show. People are like, "Wow, what happened?" Just like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very good tool to socialize.
It is. It is a
Yeah,
cool tool. Yeah. Just like a party trick.
yeah, it is. And people get shocked completely. Like they are
Yeah.
completely then even after months they are like contacting me for
Yeah.
more predictions.
Yeah.
But many times this happens that people become very dependent on astrology, which is even wrong. Like completely
Yeah.
becoming dependent. Like every day, early morning, reading the newspaper for the horoscope. Like in
Yeah.
India, every day there's the daily horoscope which comes.
Oh,
So many
cool.
people just become completely addicted to it, which is
Yeah.
also in a way wrong because whatever
Yeah.
is going to happen will happen anyway
Yes.
due to our karma.
Mm-hmm.
And to just be so
Yeah, and some people will like make choices like based off of the astrology. You know what I mean? Like There was one person who like wouldn't buy yogurt on a specific day if the moon was in a specific sign.
Yeah. That's
You know?
what people start doing. Like if
So-
today's number 30, today's 15th date, maybe for someone who has a bad Venus, he might say 15 is not a good day for me.
Yeah.
Your 6 is Venus. Like,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
so these things are not so good. It transforms into superstition rather than a strong belief.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think that's the best way to verbalize it, is that it turns into a superstition rather than like actual faith in it. Yeah, but the other thing that I wanted to mention though about like, you keep on saying like if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Like I agree. Like if there are things that are set up in your chart, like you can just have full faith that whatever karma you're meant to play out in this life, like it's going to play out. But the free will, like there is,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
there are elements, and like this is where it's so important to remember that like these daily horoscopes where we get like super tied up on this is how something's going to be, it's like you have complete control of how you're going to encounter that energy. Like don't be a victim, you know, don't let yourself just get bossed around by some words or whatever. It's like you get to control your choices ultimately, and you also get to control how you respond to the environment. So it's like, okay, even if it's saying like, oh, it's going to be a bad day, it's going to like, the energy is going to be dark, it's like you still have the choice of being lighter and being more optimistic and trying to face the world with resiliency rather than like staying inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the same in spirituality, like in Jainism or Hinduism. They say that whatever is going to happen, good or bad, you have to be neutral, just like water, the still water. That be neutral about it. Don't get attached or don't get angry or have hatred about anything that's going to happen, nor be completely indulged into it, because that's not the spiritual path. So it's just the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah. So you have some meeting, right?
I do.
Yeah. So we can like do some podcast in the future.
Okay, I would love that anytime. Just let me know.
Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
taking your time out for this podcast. Thank you so much. It
Yeah.
was really amazing. And we'll do many podcasts in the future on
Okay.
maybe particular topics of Vedic astrology or maybe in the philosophical area or the yogic part. So
Okay.
yeah, it was great.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes,
Bye.
of course. Bye.